I'm Simone and I'm bringing you this Christmas decks from the Graphic Design School. Something a little bit unusual for us. We're normally doing Adobe Suite training, but this time around we thought we'd get our hands dirty and make a Christmas sign. So here we go. I was actually inspired because we live in a street where they do Christmas lights and there's a lot of pressure every year to come up with something different. And I thought it'd be fun to do a little Instagrammable moment for all the families that walk by, and they can tag themselves on Instagram with this. So that could be a fun idea for your business or even just something for your wall at home. I'm going to show you how we started and how we made it. On eBay, I bought this neon flex rope light that can be cut at 1-inch intervals. I bought 20 meters. And then we went down to our local electronics store, which was J Car. We bought this magnifier. We never ended up using it actually as a magnifier, but we did use the clips, and that springy thing at the back of that is a holder for your soldering iron. We bought this originally, this transformer, but then we ended up having to supersize it and buy this one. This is the neon flex rope. This is the soldering iron. We actually bought one that allowed us to change the temperature. We used it at 35 degrees all the time, but it was very worthwhile buying one that you could change the temperature of. Just gives you a bit more control. This is the soldering wire that you're going to use. These are the end clips that go on the neon. Half of them will have holes in them so you can feed the wire through. These are just little clips that we found to hammer into the board so we can hold on the neon. These are just little testers we did, but this is actually the 12-volt cable that you'll need. And this little wiring comes in all sorts of colors. You just need 2 different colors that are going to enable you to make a difference between positive and negative. We used about 20 meters of this wiring for a sign of 2.7 meters long and 20 meters of flex tube. We used this pad to take off the excess solder. This is our wire strippers, so you can expose the wire. These are just cutters that we use to cut the neon. We're going to need to create a circuit tester so that you can test each of the letters. We're going to solder the wire to these alligator clips, and then we're going to attach them here to, there we go, a female power adapter. That's going to be connected to one of these male ends that is actually already on the transformer. It comes like that. That's going to enable us to test our lettering as we go. You're then going to use this copper wiring with an adhesive backing to sit on the back of the board and attach all of the wires to that. We've created a list of resources on our decks page on our website, and there's a link below for you so you can actually use those as opposed to writing everything down. Let's jump into Illustrator and have a look at how I created this sign. You can use any graphics program of your choice, but mine is Illustrator. So basically I chose a typeface, and the typeface that I chose is a free typeface. It's called Handwriting Mutlu. I didn't like the S, so I ended up choosing a different typeface and using that S and simply superimposed it. I want to create a stroke, which is an outline, and if you can imagine in the one at the top, we're looking at the neon being in the middle, and we're going to paint around, that is the black. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to make outlines on this one, which is going to give me vectorized writing to work with. So right click, create outlines. Then I'm going to have a white fill with a black stroke around. Now I want to go in and adjust the stroke so I can get those nice thick black lines. So I'm going to jump up to window at the top here, get my stroke panel out. I'm going to make the stroke on the outside, and then I'm going to adjust the weight up until the point where it looks like the top one. Perfect. Amazing. Don't worry about all these little messy bits here. We're only going to be tracing the outside line and then painting around it, so you can ignore those. I actually then saved that as a PDF and printed it. But before we do that, we want to make sure that our artboard is to scale. So I've got 2,700 millimeters by 300 millimeters, which is going to print out to mean 2.7 meters by 30 centimeters, which is exactly the area that I've got. So when I put this into a PDF, I'm going to be able to print that on my printer. Let's have a look at that. Here is the sign. If I open my print dialog and I do my page setup, I've got a printer that accepts A3, so I'm going to click it to that. But if you've got A4, that's okay, you can use that. Then I'm going to click poster. What that clever little function's going to do is spread out the sign across 10 pages, allowing you to stick them together and then making it easy to trace. Obviously, if you've got a professional printer or access to a professional printer, it's a completely different story. But imagining you're doing this from home as a little bit of a craft weekend exercise, this is how you go about it. Once printed out and all stuck together, we actually hung it up in situ so we could see if we liked it, and we did. Then we realized that it was going to be too big for us to dismantle and store every year, so we decided to break it down into 3 parts. This is just us and Shoshot the kitten measuring it out. We then used that printout to trace onto some yellow tongue flooring that we actually had left over from a renovation job. But you can use any exterior quality timber. I simply painted that up with some white exterior grade paint. We got some pink sample exterior paint made up at the hardware store, and we went to work old school style. Speaking of old school, there's actually nothing stopping you from writing out your own type from scratch. We wanted to use a printout because we wanted to see what it would look like. And we did make some adjustments once we saw it in situ. We actually chose a different typeface first of all, so we're glad we did that. Once I'd finished the sign, it was time to getting to do all the technical stuff. Even though we haven't started with the neon yet, I want to show you how to set up the soldering test part. So every time you do a letter, you're going to be testing it. The transformer already has a male part, and this female part you buy separately. We bought a few just in case we made mistakes, and then you're actually going to solder your wire to that. You can see that the black here represents the negative, and the negative always sits on the outside of any of these clips. It's a common thing. So when you're putting your black wire on the negative of your neon, you know that it's going to go on the negative there. Here we've soldered that to an alligator clip, and the white one is also soldered to an alligator clip, and we're going to use that consistently to test everything throughout our neon flex sign building. So the burning question, how do I solder? Cutting on those little lines will expose the soldering points. Clipping with the clippers around this neon flex to expose these soldering points is quite time consuming, but it's a necessary evil. Can you see those little points there? We're going to use those to solder to. Before we start soldering, let's strip a wire. So you basically clamp it and pull, and that'll expose the wire. You don't normally want the wire to be that long, but just twist it to make it nice and neat, and then you can cut it down afterwards. So let's jump into soldering now. Always making sure that you've got your positive and your negative separated. You never want those to touch, and you always be consistent. So if you're using black wire is always at the top or always at the bottom. You can never cross them over, otherwise you won't get a proper circuit and your light won't happen. So as soon as that solder heats up, there we go, you can drop that metal, that melted metal onto there, and that's going to meld your wire to those soldering points. And that's pretty much how you solder with everything. Always take the ends and use your test alligator clips, black to black, white to white, and check every letter that you get bright light. There you go, you got it. If you don't, it means there's a problem with the solder. If you leave it for too long and you don't test, you could have a problem with a letter and you're many letters in and you don't know which one's which. There we go. Feeding over again the wire through the cap and putting that on the end, making that nice and snug, and that's going to protect it. On the other end, you're going to be able to cut it according to where the letters sit. I'll show you how to set up the letters now. On the board, you're going to have parts that make up your letter. Each part's going to have these wires. Ignore that one of those is red, imagine it's black. It's going to be drilled through here, and it's also going to have an end cap. Those wires are going to be drilled through and they're going to be soldered to the copper tape I showed you earlier in the equipment list. Now we're setting up putting these on our finished painted sign. You can cut these, like I was telling you, wherever they finish on your letter, as long as one end already has the 12 volt soldered to it. You can see the letter A leading into the letter N. Then we're going to take an end clip and put an end on that. We're going to take a holder, have a look at where that should sit. Take our hammer and simply hammer it in place. There you've created one part of the A leading into the N. One of the things that you should be mindful of when you are actually creating your lettering is to flow in the same way that you would handwrite them. So there's the A, and then that would flow up into the N, and then you're going to go down and up into the T, down again, and then the T bar across. Fast forwarding a little bit now that we've finished our word, we want to get rid of all of these wires. So we're going to drill a hole just discreetly under where it will be hidden a little bit, and we're going to feed the wires through to the back of the board. You're going to do that with each and every one of those wires, and once they're all fed through, we're then going to solder each wire to the copper adhesive tape. Now that all of the wire has been threaded through, we're going to take that copper adhesive tape, peel off the back adhesive as we go, and stick it down. You'll note that there are two lines, one is for positive and the other is for negative. Then we're going to jump in and we're going to solder all of the black wires to one of them and all of the white wires to the other. I'll give you a little quick demo on how we do that. This is the point where you really need to cajole a friend to helping you, because it's pretty hard to do with only two hands. And basically you just go along, and like we've taught you how to solder, you just solder each and every one of those little wires, and you'll note that black is on one side and white is on the other side. I'm going to speed up and show you us welding in fast motion. Now that all of your wiring from the neon is welded onto the copper tape, you actually need to weld on two more pieces of wire that are going to create the connectors between the boards, or if you've just got one board, that will create the connectors between the board and the transformer. So you weld the white wire onto the white line and the black one onto the black one, and then you test it. Using your alligator clips, you clip them to the end like you have been doing with each neon letter. White to white, black to black. You can start to see, got a bit of a glow underneath there. Let's have a look at it. Oh, that's interesting, the S isn't working. The next day we had a look at it and definitely the S wasn't working. So we pulled it off, pulled out the wire and tried to figure out what the issue was. Once we pulled the cap off, it was pretty easy to see that one of our wires had become unsoldered, unstuck. I think it's worthwhile showing you how to fix a problem. It's pretty easy. You kind of go in the same way that you start. You simply put your soldering iron on the place where you want to undo. So we decided to redo this one and make it nice and neat. And that basically melts that little bit of solder, and you clean it up and then you start again. Once our 3 boards were finished and all the neon was done, because we were putting this outside, we definitely wanted to have some waterproofing. As mentioned, we were doing some renovations, so we had a few materials left over, and the waterproofing was one of them from the bathroom. So we ended up being able to use that on the back and it worked really well. I looked it up and you can buy small tins of waterproofing either for a pond or bathroom floor. That's just to help make sure that those little wires, exposed wires, they don't get wet. It's only 12 volts, so it's not a big deal, but it's nice to keep the water off it. I suggest you do a little test area and wait for it to dry, and then make sure that you've got a circuit running through. So just create a little sample neon with a bit of sample board and test the waterproofing on it first before you go ahead and do the whole thing. Now that we've got 2 boards ready, both of those boards have got white and black cables coming out of them, and they're ready to be connected by the male-female power adapter. So we have to put these on, and each one of those power adapters is going to be for one board, and then they're going to simply click into each other when we've got them up and in situ. Now I'm going to show you kind of in fast motion how we did this. So pulling off the cover of the little power adapter, you've got 2 spots to fit the black and the white. The black always goes in the long outside bit because that's negative, that's our negative, and the white goes in the other one. This is where the clamps really came in handy for us. It was being able to hold that together while we soldered. You could do it with a friend, but it's tiny little, work, and it's hard to do that with hands in the way. So once you solder that together, you can put the cover of it back on, and then you go ahead and you do the other side. You'll notice here that we pull the male out of the female. We found it was less fragile to solder when we had that inside. So connect the 2 now, pop them together, and then go up the other end to your other wire that's sitting outside and use your alligator clips to test. See if that circuit's working. There we go. There's some bright light coming in. And on the other side, yes. Because we're joining 3 boards together, we don't have one flowing current. We have to break up the boards and connect them somehow. So you've seen how we've connected the 2nd and the 3rd board. Now we need to connect the 1st and the 2nd board, and we've decided that the transformer is going to live closest to the 1st board under the carport. So in order to connect to the transformer, we actually need to have a little bit of a different method because we're connecting 4 wires. So we're connecting 2 from the 1st board and 2 from the 2nd board. So we put them in this little nifty thing that's going to allow us to group the wires and also allow us to do it once we put it up at the height that we're going to put it at. So we don't want to get up on the ladder with our soldering iron. The 2nd and the 3rd boards, we can clip them together, but once these are up and they're screwed in, all we need to do, because we've got a really nice long lead that we've left, is to be able to go ahead and put them in like so. And then you'll do the same with the white, and then that connects them to the transformer. Finally, we get to go outside and hang them up, and we hang them up one by one. You'll notice we also put a little lip on the top to protect it a bit from the rain. We connect our two together, boards 2 and 3. We also put a little bit of padding on the back of each one of those boards, just a little bit of timber that made sure that the wiring wasn't flush up against the carport fascia. Remember back a minute ago when we were looking at those 2 long cables between board 1 and 2, you pull them up, tuck them behind and then under, and that's where we're going to connect them. I'm going to give you a little sped up version of how we connected them. The white wire with the white wire and the black wire with the black wire, and then that's able to be plugged into the male adapter of the transformer. And here's the moment of truth now. When we plug in the transformer, does it light up? Yes, it does. That's a good sign. So now we can go ahead and put the transformer where it needs to be. Lucky for us, all of this is able to be tucked away under cover, nice and neat. And then all we need to do is set a timer so it comes on every night. We hope you enjoyed this very analog version of our DEX Design Weekly exercises. You can see all of our other DEXs on our website in the link below. There'll also be an equipment list for this here. There's also a little upload button there where you can upload your finished sign as well, and we'd really love to see that. We hope you enjoyed getting really analog like we did. We had a messy studio and a very fun couple of weekends, so I hope you get the same adventures out of that. All the best. Merry Christmas.